pretty amazing. That's most people I've talked to in a long time at once. Hopefully we can meet the goals that you all have for spending your time with me. So I guess the ultimate plan is to provide some guidance for building your own fitness routine. And with that, my biggest goal is to make sure it's not so intimidating that it seems unrealistic or that it's, confusing or too stressful to even want to try or whatever it might be. So the goal is to provide some just basic guidelines. With that, I always want to say that you could ask 100 different people and get 100 different recommendations for what you should do and how you should start and the exercises that you should do, which is why I think it can be kind of intimidating or overwhelming. But it can also maybe lead to maybe some excitement of you have a lot of autonomy to do what actually makes you happy, and what makes it more motivational to you, and doing things that you really enjoy, which is the most important part of just so you want to do it the next day and it doesn't seem like a job or a chore or a task. And so hopefully that's the plan. Please feel free to ask questions along the way if you have any, and I'll try to answer them, or we can collaborate and come up with a good answer for you, and we'll go from there. So I am Justin. I teach in the College of Human Environmental Sciences. My background is athletic training, so sports medicine, and then my PhD is in exercise science. And so I do try to approach this as not only like just a sense of well-being, but then also like how can we reduce the risk of injury? How can we improve our health based on that background? So the plan, if I can get this to work. So the goals for today, one, why the heck are we even here? Why are we trying to do this? Are we ready to do it? And then providing some of those general recommendations and then getting a little bit more specific from there. I do want to emphasize this though. So in addition to all the great health benefits that we're going to talk about, the goal is to help relieve stress, not add to it. And so this shouldn't be something that you feel like you have to do, or something that, you're stressed about getting it done, or what you have to do, or you have to go for a run if you hate running or whatever it might be. It should be, something that really allows you to just feel comfortable and confident and relieve that stress so you're ready for the next day or whatever else you have. So you're going to see this slide throughout the whole presentation just to make sure we maintain that focus. Yeah, that's the ultimate goal. So I did try to provide QR codes throughout. So if you are interested in something or need more information, or if I didn't explain something enough, you should be able to use those to get the material that I got the information from. Hopefully, fingers crossed, they work. But the biggest question I think we always should start off with is why? Like, why does this matter? Why should we do this? Why are you all here? I really think that helps us not only maintain or stay motivated, but maintain the discipline behind it. I was actually talking to my class this morning about the difference between motivation and discipline, and motivation being like the 5-hour energy drink where we kind of have those peaks and valleys, and discipline being, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do this anyway. And so I think understanding the why will really help that. And so you can see the picture on the right of the ultimate goal for all of us is just to move more and sit less. And so if you're looking at it, you can see, looking at the green, that the more we're moving, obviously the less we're going to sit. And we'll talk about some general guidelines for maybe how much they recommend to move, and the exercise and all that good stuff. But ultimately, we just want to move. And so you don't have to make it much more complicated than that of, try to limit how much you're sitting down. And if you're not sitting down, you're obviously actively doing something. And so that's better than nothing. Big picture wise, we know that if we move more, sit less, that we can reduce our risk of mortality, of different diseases, of diabetes and all of that. But then we also have just some major benefits, and I'm sure most of these you have heard or seen before. But it's always nice to reemphasize it, when we are coming up with our plan and thinking about the why behind it. So not only the things we already mentioned, decreasing our risk of different, cancers and things like that, but really improving our cognition, our ability to think and remember, which I know I can absolutely use most days, especially on a Friday afternoon at 12. Improves that quality of life, reducing anxiety, and decreasing our risk of depression, improving our sleep. And we know if we can sleep, that really leads to a lot of improvements everywhere else in life. So I really want to emphasize these, but then also these as well. of the short term and the long term benefits. And what we mean by short term is like immediately, of like during and immediately after exercise, how that can really improve just our overall quality of life and our happiness and how confident we feel and things like that. And then also reducing anxiety, our blood pressure, insulin sensitivity, some more of the health factors. Long-term benefits, which we've already mentioned a few of those, same things that we see quite a bit, and then the disease management, if any of those are relevant to you all. But one thing we should really emphasize is some of more of the brain health that they've come out in the past couple of years and how beneficial it can be, not only for adults, but also children too. And we'll talk about some of the recommendations for children. I know this can be more of a team effort with the whole family. And so there's major advantages to doing any kind of movement, physical activity with that. So cognition, again, like we've already mentioned, overall quality of life, decreasing anxiety, improving sleep, decreasing depression, especially with just the news and things and everything going on. I think we can all use that about right now. And so this really helps improve just that sense of accomplishment, that sense of confidence, making you overall happier. And then if nothing else, it is just, again, to help you relieve just stress. And when you're coming up, what should I do today? It shouldn't be stressful. It should be something that you're excited about, you're proud of, building up that sense of confidence. And so it should be hopefully something that you really enjoy and that you have fun with. So I know that we all have different starting points. And so one thing I do want to emphasize is just making sure that you are ready to start. And so this is just the PARQ, the Physical Activity Readiness Questionnaire. You might have seen this before. The QR code takes you to the full document that you can, look at and fill out. But again, it's just like giving you an idea or a better idea of if you are ready to start today, or if maybe you're advised to go talk to your healthcare provider first to make sure that you are, not setting yourself up for injury or harm or anything like that, and maybe some of protocols that you should follow or activities that you should maybe limit and things like that. So if you go through those first 7 questions, you can see that if you check yes to all of those, or if you check no to all of those, then you should be cleared to go. If you do have any yeses, then the document does continue on asking you more relevant questions to that, and then you can decide if you should go talk to a healthcare professional first before you participate. All right. So the general guidelines and recommendations, hopefully this will give you the big picture that I'm assuming many of you are looking for to help you get started and help you breathe a little bit of what do I want to do today and kind of coming up with your own individualized plan that works best for you. And again, I do want to, I know there's probably not many preschool kids on here today, but I know that this can be a major like team thing to where you and your family or, if you take care of kids or anything like that, this is a group activity for everybody to get involved. And so the recommendations start as early as, 2 to 3 years old of being just physically active and moving around. And I know that might seem like common sense, but obviously with our schedules and every other thing that we have going on, and then once you get off of work, just not wanting to do anything, it can be really easy to get sidetracked off of that. And so movement is good. And then if you look at more of the school age, kids or adolescents, you can see that 60 minutes a day of activity is what is recommended, and then really including some strength training too. And we'll talk about strength training quite a bit. Some people might be hesitant with kids and adolescents to participate in any kind of strength training, but it can be incredibly beneficial. Research has actually shown that young kids or adolescents who are overweight or obese actually prefer strength training more than cardiovascular, and it gets them more physically active because they're more confident. And it's a little bit easier. It's not as taxing cardiovascularly, and so they enjoy it a lot more. So it's a great way to help them get started like moving if they really need that. But big picture wise, I think this is one of the most important slides that I really want to focus on. So our main goal, obviously we already mentioned, is to move more and sit less, right? So some movement is better than none, more movement is better than some. And so that's the ultimate piece of, planning your day. If I can stand up and do something active, use the stairs, things like that. But when we start thinking about those health benefits and what could really help improve that or decrease our risk of any kind of health concern, typically it's recommended 150 to 300 minutes of moderate intensity activity. So if you break that up into, I know I'm gonna have a plan for 5 days a week. My weekends are my time to do other things. I'm not really planning things in that. And that's really, 30 minutes to 60 minutes a week per day, right? And that's of moderate intensity. We'll talk about the difference between moderate and vigorous. Vigorous intensity is 75 to 150 minutes. Obviously, vigorous is going to be more intense. And then we can do an equivalent of the two. So the nice thing about this is it does give you some structure and some guidelines that you can follow. But I think the best part is it allows you to have a lot of autonomy in figuring out what that means to you and what you enjoy. And so really trying to figure out what is fun, what is something that you enjoy doing. So this can be go for a walk or go for a run, but this could also be, maybe you really enjoy dancing, or maybe you like the group fitness classes, or maybe, you enjoy cycling, whatever it might be. And so you have a ton of autonomy to figure out what is going to make you happy and what is really something that you can stick with. And it's not saying even that you have to do this every single day. And, if looking at the intensities and what's recommended, it's, if you are planning to go for a 45-minute walk and then your meeting just ran over and it took some of your time, it's not saying that it's shot now. It's saying that maybe I only have 20 minutes, but I can just increase the intensity and still achieve the goal and the recommendation that they have. And so I can just walk maybe a little bit faster than I was planning to, but I can still go and do something and it's still incredibly beneficial. Um, and then what else is recommended is that this is, done throughout the week. And what they mean by that is it's not saving that 150 minutes till just doing it on Saturday. Trying to spread it out throughout the week, but still remembering that some movement is better than none. And so if you do just have one of those weeks that is just not your week, and Saturday is your day to just, you know, blow some steam or whatever it might be, then maybe that's okay. And so it's really just looking at um, what can I do consistently and really building these habits versus, I have to do this or it's wrong, right? So looking at the moderate versus the vigorous intensity, an easy just rule of thumb is if it's moderate, you can still talk. You can still have a conversation. Your heart rate is like, 60-ish, 70-ish% of your heart rate max, but you're still able to have a conversation with somebody. So you're still able to breathe. You might not be able to sing a song or anything like that, but it's still like a comfortable pace. The vigorous is going to be a little more intense to where you can maybe say a few words. You got a good sweat going on, but you can't have like a full-blown conversation. You still need to take breaths pretty regularly in order to maintain that pace. All right. So again, a combination of those two, figuring out what works best for you, and then just trying to spread that out throughout the week. And again, if you have any questions, I know I'm talking somewhat fast, and so if you have any questions at all, please feel free to stop me. You can just write it in the chat, and I should be able to see it too. And then in addition to that, it is recommended that adults participate in some kind of strength training. And so I feel like just based on conversations I had, this might be the most intimidating aspect because, many of us maybe already do go out and take a walk or go for, a swim or something like that. But the strength training piece is what some of us are not the most comfortable with. And so one of the goals for here in a couple of slides is to maybe break that down and to offer some advice for helping you be more comfortable and knowing where to start with it. But adults should participate at least 2 times per week of strength training. I do want to emphasize that it is all major muscle groups should be used 2 times per week. And the reason I say that is sometimes you see kind of a split of, Tuesday I'm going to do lower extremity and Thursday I'll do upper extremity. Which can be fine for if you're like just beginning, and you're just building up the ability to do it. But for the most part, you should try to target each major muscle group. So your upper extremity, so your arms and your chest and your back and your core, and then your lower extremity, so your thighs and your calves and all that, at least 2 times per week. All right. But again, you have all of the autonomy with how you want to accomplish that. Um, so that can be at home, that can be home exercises, that can be if you do have a gym membership or you want to go to a gym, that can be your Pilates, that can be your boot camps, that can be your Pure Bars, that can be all the things. And so again, finding what really motivates you and what you're most comfortable with, um, and finding like the location that is most comfortable to you, that you feel the safest and that you know is going to be actually like applicable in the long run. And what I mean by that is if you know that when you go home, you have a lot to do and you might not have time to go to the gym, there are a ton of home exercises that you can really implement and still achieve this goal without having to, pay a membership and go somewhere else to do it. The QR code here is for the National Academy of Sports Medicine, their exercise library. You could also Google a billion different exercises of, body weight exercises or, resistance training, and you can go do those things. The reason I chose this one is just because it is from a national academy, sports medicine. So it is really like, hopefully maintaining the appropriate form and technique and recommendations that way. But it also provides videos for how to correctly do each exercise. You can, toggle through and click different boxes for the body area that you want to focus on. I do encourage you, I think there's like some boxes on the bottom that you can choose beginner, advanced, or like intermediate. Based on my, experience looking through it, I would recommend maybe not clicking those because it deletes a lot of the exercises that you might enjoy doing or you might be able to do just based on toggling through that. So I encourage you to just look at all the exercises and then you can kind of break it down from there to see what you feel comfortable with, what's kind of meeting your goal. All right. I know this is a huge, busy slide. Nobody likes that. But just for the older adults, which is typically 60, 65 plus, it's really the same recommendations, but really a key is focusing on like balance exercises. And if you have any kind of chronic illnesses or diseases, just paying attention to those, doing what you can, making sure that you are approved by a healthcare professional to participate in whatever you're trying to participate in. And then I did want to include these, but I didn't feel the need to go through each one individually. But if you are in one of these special populations, there are recommendations as well. So if you know you have a chronic health condition, if you are, have a disability or know somebody who does, or pregnant or just pregnant, whatever it might be, there's recommendations for you too. All right. So this is going to kind of hopefully get into why you are here a little bit more. But first, in addition to all of this that we've gone over, it should be stress-free. It should be fun. It should be something that you want to do, something that you enjoy. So find the thing that you enjoy, and it could be completely different than somebody else, and that is perfectly okay. And so just because I do one thing doesn't mean that you have to do that thing. All right. And just because it's what I recommend doesn't mean that you have to do it. So find what you like to do and what makes you happy, and so that you want to keep doing it. So resistance training, again, like I mentioned, I think is the big one. That's the one, at least for me and what I've heard. And so thinking about where do I even start? You should start by thinking like, well, what type of exercises am I comfortable doing at least at first? And what do I have access to? So if I'm at home versus I have a home gym versus I have to go somewhere or I want to go somewhere. And so all of these recommendations can be accomplished through body weight, through just elastic bands, to machines, to free weights, and they all have their advantages and they all have maybe their disadvantages to them. But figuring out, why and the what. For those who are just beginning and never really resistance training before, I would probably encourage the first three before you do the free weights. And by free weights, I mean like dumbbells and barbells and squat racks and things like that. The machines, if you go to a gym, provide a safer option because it really helps control the plane of movement that you're in. So it decreases your risk of injury that way. And for the sake of time, it's a lot easier to move a pin out of like a weight stack and change it than it is to have to load up a weight and then re-rack it and find a place to do it. And so if you are just beginning, don't even know where to start just yet, I would recommend the first three if you have access to the bands and the machines. And so I'm not trying to make this too complicated or more complicated than it should be, but typically, I feel like exercise-wise and especially resistance training, one of the big concerns and the reasons for maybe not participating in it, other than the confidence piece, is the lack of time. Because you see people that go to the gym and they're there for an hour or they're there for, even longer than that. And then you have to think about the duration of driving there and driving home. And so the the exercises that are recommended, these core exercises where you're really focusing on your large muscle group multi-joint movements, are going to be the best like bang for your buck. And so it gets you in and out, 20, 30 minutes, and then you could be done, if not sooner than that, which is really kind of refreshing of knowing that I don't have to spend my whole day doing this. And so the core exercises are going to be those that are, again, larger muscle groups. And what we mean by the core movements are going to be like your squat, lunges, push-ups, bench press, lat pull down and pull up, things like that, whatever you feel most comfortable with. Big reason for that as well is because these offer a lot of advantages. The biggest one for most of us is that they are going to mimic most of like our activities for functional movement. And so a lot of times when you say you're going to do a squat, people are like, no way, I'm not going to do that at all. I don't feel comfortable with that. But it's really the functional movement of sitting in a chair and being able to stand back up. And so having the strength and ability and the confidence to do that, especially as we get older and older. So that really matters. The lunges are the same thing. I don't know if I feel real confident doing lunges. It does take a lot of balance, but it's really preparing you for being able to walk and then being able to walk and maybe you trip and then being able to catch yourself. So a lot of these movements are really nice for just functional everyday activities. And in addition to that, it really helps with the whole nervous system, our entire muscular system, multiple joints working together at the same time. And then our endocrine system. So we see a lot more of like a hormone response. And so we see a lot more advantages to this type of like large muscle group movements other than, really just focusing on the accessory movements. Um, so they should form the bulk of your program. Again, it doesn't have to be weighted squats by any means. This can really be like a leg press if you want to use a machine. This could be, a seated row if you're using machine, things like that. Or it could be I'm squatting down to a chair and I stand back up and I can do that, or just lunges at home. And so it is, just trying to do multiple movements or multiple muscles and joints at the same time. With that, I am not hating on these assistant exercises at all. It's just maybe takes a little bit longer. And what I mean by that is, look in the picture here, he's doing leg extensions, so really focusing on the quad, right? And so he's going to have to do leg extensions and then also leg curls to focus on hamstrings. And so that's now you're doing two exercises where I could just have done one while focusing on the squat. And so it just saves time that way. This can be great for, I'm really trying to focus on this getting stronger. I just had, knee surgery, or I've had knee surgery in the past and didn't really do the best at rehab. And so I'm trying to build up my quad strength with that. Absolutely. Or if you have more time and this is just what you enjoy doing, 1000%. But for just sake of time and activities that you're really trying to mimic, these multi-joint movements are going to be the best. Right? And so if we are going to design our program, and so we know I'm going to do squats, and then I'm going to do bench press, and then or push-ups, and then I'm going to do lunges, and I'm going to do lat pull downs, and that's going to be like my plan. We really want to make sure that we are focusing on like balancing the muscles that are around a joint. And so what I mean by that is, if I'm going to do a pushing exercise like a bench or a push-up, then I should probably do a pulling exercise to make sure that I'm balanced on both sides, right? So a lot of times I feel like, especially students, so I always have my students do a project in class, in one of the classes I teach for athletic training students, where they have to design their own strength and conditioning program based on a lot of the labs that we do. And everybody loves a bench press because it's what everybody does. But then we really see that we are really like limited in what we do on the posterior chain or our back. And we're already very like anterior dominated. We are always like hunched over our computer or hunched over our phone. So everything's already super tight on the anterior side. And so trying to pull that back and balance it back out is going to be really beneficial for just our overall like joint health and making sure that, our shoulders aren't getting impinged and things like that. And so we really want to focus on, if I'm going to do a push, I should do a pull. If I'm going to, you know, I always do like squats and then a deadlift, right? And so if I'm going to squat down, I should be able to pick something back up as well. So I highly encourage you to think about, trying to, again, balance it back out. And what I mean by this of like, it might not always be an equal ratio of strength, or equal strength, but proper ratio is, um, so if we think about like our quad, so the top of our thigh, the front of our thigh, we have four muscles there. And then our hamstrings, we only have three. Like the back of our thigh, we only have three muscles. So your front of your thigh is going to be stronger just because there's more musculature than the back. But you still want to maintain like 75% of the strength of your quads and your hamstrings, right? So there should still be that ratio of, you know, three-fourths, whatever, since there's three muscles compared to the four. And so as we're kind of designing this as well, we really want to limit fatigue, especially at the beginning, as much as possible. So this is coming from the sports medicine side and the athletic trainer side. We really see that fatigue is what leads to injury. Like once you're fatigued out, that's where we see a lot of injuries occur, and we're trying to limit that as much as possible. And so when I'm designing my program, I might do, again, I might start with squats. That's a pretty intense exercise with a lot of, core stabilization and lower extremity movement. And then I might give my lower extremity a rest, and now I'm going to do bench press or push-ups. And then I'm going to go back because now my upper extremity is a little fatigued out. Now I can have rested a little bit, and now I can do some lunges. And then my lower extremity is a little fatigued out again, and so I'm going to do some rows. So I just worked on balancing and maintain that appropriate balance, but then also resting in between to give my like each muscle group some rest in between. Same thing and same idea for the pushing and the pulling. If I'm going to do a push, then maybe I can rest and I can do a pull. Again, making sure I maintain that balance between muscles and muscle groups, and then giving myself a rest in between. All right. This is, oh, I do have some questions. A quick question. Will you be sharing the slide? Yes, the slides will be shared. Sorry, I'm going through these right now. I work in athletics and I move and lift a lot. Should I try to do some type of workout when I get home? That is an excellent question. So thinking about what your activities are at work. And so if you are moving around a lot, lifting a lot, that all counts. And so obviously you can do something at home. You can always go above that 300, minute minimum. But if you already feel like the muscular fatigue and you feel like you're getting a good, workout with that, then that absolutely counts. Um, and it might be, this week I did a lot of physical labor, next week I didn't, and so you can kind of balance it out that way. Or I did a lot of overhead stuff, but I didn't do a lot of like lower body stuff, so I can maybe just focus on my lower body, whatever you want to do. But absolutely, all of everything that you're participating in counts towards that. Um, I also have heard that they wish the rec center had more room and space for the adults. I've heard a lot of students actually not going to the rec center because it can be overwhelming and just so many people there. I think the group classes are really beneficial for that. So where if you sign up in time and different time frames, you might have more adults than students there. Absolutely. Um, so this slide I know can be a little intimidating, but I think this is one of the most important slides that we can focus on for where to start. So typically, maybe if this works, sorry. So typically this is what's recommended. So if you look at this picture, the numbers across the top and the bottom are the number of reps that they kind of recommend that you do. So I'm going to do 3 sets of 8 to 12 reps, which is typically recommended. The reason for that, I'm assuming, is because if you look at the chart, you're kind of hitting everything. You're getting stronger, working on your strength, you're working on power, you're working on hypertrophy, which is like increasing the size of your muscle, and then muscular endurance. So I'm able to complete a lot of repetitions at a time before a fatigue out. And so it kind of hits everything. Based on other guidelines and based on, if you are just starting from zero, I would highly recommend this. And so this is actually going to be focusing more on the muscular endurance piece. And so you don't fatigue out as easily and you're building up that resistance and that endurance so we can really reduce our risk of injury. And so you're still, obviously, you can see you're still getting some strength work. You're going to get stronger. You're still going to get, the muscles are going to grow. And then you're still going to really build up that muscular endurance. And when we say muscles are growing, I'm not saying that you're going to lift weights a couple of times and be a bodybuilder by any means. Um, I do have a lot of students that are very hesitant to lift because of that fear. Um, but I've heard this before, and I think it's a great analogy of saying that you don't want to, resistance train or lift weights because you don't want to get too bulky is like saying you don't want to drive your car because you don't want to be a race car driver. And what it means by that is you really have to put a lot of training specific to becoming a bodybuilder or becoming like too bulky. Whereas we are just trying to build muscle. And when we build muscle, we see that we can really change our body composition, if that's what your ultimate goal is. And so muscular endurance, and that's really based on this. And so this is from the National Academy of Sports Medicine again. But you can see the staircase here to where when we are starting from zero, starting from not really doing anything just yet, we want to focus on this stabilization piece. And then we can build up to strength endurance and then all the other great things that we see to where we're great professional athletes. Again, the QR code provides more information for it, but the stabilization piece is meaning that I'm able to stabilize and make sure that I am moving how I want to move, even when I do get fatigued. And so if I am doing multiple squats at a time, I want to ensure that I'm not starting to, my trunk's not starting to give out, my hips aren't starting to, dive in, or my knees aren't starting to dive in. I'm really like losing my proper technique and form. And so really focusing on making sure I can stabilize first before I add any kind of resistance to that or try to do too much is really important for overall health. And I think that's going to really tie to a lot of overall happiness with being like with what you're doing and being confident with going on to the next day, right? And not being too sore, anything like that. So phase one is this stabilization phase where you're really building that endurance. It's 12 to 20 reps, which seems like a lot, but it goes back to, building that muscular endurance and focusing on slow movements. And so this could be, I'm not very confident doing a squat. And so I'm going to slowly sit down into a chair and then I'm going to slowly stand back up. And I'm going to do that for 12 to 20 reps and kind of build up the ability to do that. And then I'm going to move into, I can't really do a regular push-up just yet. And so I'm going to, lean against the wall and push up. And I'm going to slowly just lower myself down to the wall and then push myself back up. And so for those 12 to 20 reps, whatever I feel comfortable doing. And then I'm going to try to do, I have this backpack that I can pick up. So I'm going to try to deadlift this off the floor, 12 to 20 reps. So it's really just focusing on these nice, slow, controlled movements, making sure that I can maintain that joint stabilization as I'm moving. The biggest part about this, and so where it might be handy to have like a mirror, is to make sure that you're doing it correctly. So a lot of times we will modify it and we don't know that we are. So if your body compensates and you're leaning forward too much, we don't realize we are. And so having a mirror to help you kind of see that and control it is really beneficial. And then once you're able to do that just fine, then you can move into more of your strength endurance, which is going to be, I feel like these rep schemes should be a little bit higher, but where you can do, I'm going to do 15 push-ups, and then I'm going to go and do 15 banded rows, and then I can kind of go back and forth with a little bit less rest in between, right? And then building up the ability to add more and more to that. And I know this slide kind of looks big as well. So it's kind of switching gears to more cardiovascular training and like you're walking, you're running, you're cycling, you're swimming. Biggest recommendations for this, you can read, a ton of articles about and get a ton of different bits of advice, I guess. But as you progress with this and you're still, following the guidelines for the amount of exercise that you're getting, the amount of physical activity, as you're trying to progress of like, what do I do next week if you're ready to go? is really making sure you're not increasing it too much. So if we increase it too much, that can lead to injury, and you hear of stress fractures and things all the time. But it's also making sure that you're not doing too much to where you get burnout, which is I don't say a risk by any means, but it's something that a lot of us have probably dealt with when we're trying to start something new. And so it's the 10% rule, to where you're not really changing, the frequency, the intensity, or the duration by more than 10%. And I'll provide an example of that, or a better example than this here in a couple of slides. So the frequency just being like how many times per day or per week. The intensity is going to be, what percentage of my heart rate or my RPE scale, and then the duration is how long am I going to go for, right, on that day or on that bout of training. So week one, I can see here, I'm going to go 3 times per week, 60 to 70%. This is your target heart rate, and we'll talk about that in a second, for 30 minutes. And the next week, this is actually a big jump to me, because I'm increasing the day and the time. So maybe I'm just going to still go 3 times per week, but I'm going to go for 35 minutes instead of that 30 minutes, right? And so just slowly progressing to make sure that we're not adding too much. But again, I'll provide a better example of that here in a couple of slides. And so this is also give you a little more foundation for like, how are you choosing the intensity and what is that based off of? And so this is from, again, the National Academy of Sports Medicine. You might see that some organizations have 5 zones. They have 3. They're all just like really similar, just split up a little bit differently. But zone 1 is what's typically like your moderate exercise. So this says 60, but 50 to 70, 75% of your heart rate max, with an overall goal of just building your cardiovascular endurance, your aerobic endurance. Okay. And so one way that we can track that, if like, am I reaching that, is a percentage of your heart rate max. And an easy way to calculate that, it's not the most accurate, but it's an easy way, is you have 220. I'll provide an example here. You have 220 minus your age, right? And so that's going to give you ish about what your max heart rate will be. So as we get older, our max heart rate is going to decrease. And so once I have an idea of what my max heart rate is, then I can multiply that by the intensity that I want to go. So I'm going to go about 60% of my heart rate max is what moderate level activity is. So 180 times that 0.6 is about 108 beats per minute. And then the reason I have 2 calculations here is because it's nice to have a range. It's really hard to exercise and stay at exactly 108 beats per minute. And so I can have a range now. So I'm going to fall anywhere between 108 and 126. So, if I'm going uphill, it's going to get a little higher. If I'm going, straight, or, I slow down a little bit, or I'm feeling a little fatigued, then I can drop that down to 108 beats. And then we can calculate that, you can get an idea based on that rule of thumb of, if can I have a conversation, or if you have a watch or something like that that calculates it for you, it just gives you a better idea of which zone you're in. And then as you progress, you can be like, okay, I feel like I can move into this zone 2. I feel pretty confident, and so I'm going to have a little bit more intense, more vigorous intensity exercise for today, increasing to like 76, 75% or more. And then just thinking about, where do I want to go? Treadmill is typically a little bit easier than running outside. Or on a track. Big reason for that is because you're just keeping up with the belt. But when it's freezing cold outside, or if it's raining, or you just like the environment of being inside and being around other people on a treadmill, then that's perfectly fine. One thing that you can do to offset the difference is you can increase the grade of that treadmill to about 1%, and it more so mimics running outside, because now you're trying to keep up with the belt, and obviously at inclines, you're having to use more energy to do that. And then I'm not trying to insult anybody's intelligence about how to ride a bike by any means, but cycling can be really good. Swimming can be really good. I know I didn't put anything about that in there. The elliptical machine, rowing, they can all be incredible. The reason I put the bike on here is because sometimes we don't adjust the seat high enough. And so sometimes there's so much knee flexion that you might not really be getting I don't say a benefit, because you're still getting benefit, but it might actually make it harder for you if you're not getting enough knee extension. But this can be incredibly beneficial because it's non-weight bearing. And so walking and running might not be possible for a lot of people. And so this activity is non-weight bearing. So it might be more functional. Same thing with rowing, swimming, things like that. And so I wanted to provide just some additional resources. We're almost finished here. So that library of exercises is incredible. The MoveSpring app is great. For that, if you go to that Explore tab and then click on Workouts, you can kind of pick and choose what works best for you. Again, finding what makes you happy, what makes you confident, what type of exercise you want to do that day. And so that can be really nice to have. This is the example I was talking about with the progression. I'm not getting paid for saying this by any means, but the Couch to 5K, the plan is great. And if you look at it and you go through it, you can see like they really follow like almost a 10% rule. It already has at least one day of strength training built in for you. And so there's the three different programs. I did put the Legends one in here because it is for those who are like working on time, and so you're probably not in this presentation right now. But for those new to a walking program, you want to be more consistent. This is a great way to get started, to give you kind of that guideline with it. Again, if you are interested in doing the 5K, possibly on March 7th would be great. This is the next one. Again, the champion one, so maybe you have some running experience, but still kind of working through that and building up to it. But again, you can really see that, 35 minutes, and then you're 1.5 mile run or walk. And so it's kind of a combination of the two. And then the next week isn't like overwhelming. It's not like doubling the work that you're trying to do. And so I highly encourage you to use those resources. Even if you don't plan on doing the 5K, if you're not going to be in town or whatever, it's there for you. And so I highly encourage you to look for those. UA offers a ton of classes. I know obviously it might be hard to get into the rec center sometime, but the group exercise classes that we do have personal trainers that can be incredibly beneficial. But if nothing else, remember, it's not supposed to be stressful. It's supposed to be fun. So really try out what works best for you. If it's wrong, that's okay. Just as long as you're not doing anything that's so far out of your comfort zone that you're gonna maybe increase your risk of injury. So it's really you trusting yourself and making sure that you are doing what you know you can do, and then you build up the confidence with that. And the last thing I really want to go over is 2026. And so ChatGPT AI can be incredibly beneficial. There has been research talking about how beneficial it can be. And so this is from the ACSM. I'm not going to go through this one too much, but you can see the quick prompt that they use for ChatGPT, and then they came out with a program of something that they could follow, and you can kind of play with it from there. But I really like this one. I know it's a lot. I got this prompt, or at least the idea of the prompt, from the HASTE workshop, which is through the Teaching Academy, UA's Teaching Academy. And so it really is as specific as it can possibly be. And so I highly encourage you. Obviously, there's going to be positive and negative to using any kind of AI. Positives being it's 2026, and so you can kind of talk to it and chat with it for what works and doesn't work, and get that immediate feedback and all of that. Negatives being it's not a real person. You're not getting immediate feedback for like how the exercise is actually looking and going. There is the risk of providing wrong information by all means, but that's where we really have to come in as humans and know like, no, I don't like that. I don't think I should be doing that. That's not going to be the best for me. But it is a great way of just getting ideas. And I have actually used this real recently just for I was just getting tired of coming up with my own ideas, and I just needed something else to tell me what to do for a little bit. And so it allowed me to take a little bit of a brain break and do it that way. But you can see go through, you can see it's following the guidelines that we just went over, my age, type of job, when I have lunch break, what I like to do, what I don't like to do, what I've done in the past, things like that. But then it gives me a whole prompt of questions that I can fill out to make it more specific to me. And so what are my primary goals? And I can answer those. What do I prefer to do? Walking or running or swimming or whatever it might be. How many days per week? What do I feel comfortable doing resistance wise? What type of resistance movements do I like to do? What about my joints do I, need to pay attention to? How much enjoyment? How long am I actually happy doing it until it becomes more of a job, right? And then you can just answer it just like a conversation or in a paragraph form, answering all of those questions, and then it spits it out for you of different things that you can do. One thing I do want to highlight, and this is the last slide really, is really paying attention to and making sure you follow the guidelines that we kind of went over before. So just for beginners, this is having me do the 8 to 12 reps, 8 to 10 rep route, or even there's one like 6 to 8. That's really low. And so you could just talk back to it. I know I sound ridiculous saying I talk back to a chat bot, but talk back to it saying, please increase the number of reps to at least 12 and make sure that they are consistent and equal. So one thing I don't like is that they have 8 to 10 reps for squats, but then I do push-ups and they drop the number of reps. I like it for just to be balanced throughout personally, and making sure it's balanced front to back as well. So, chest to back, right? And then Saturday plan, my lunch break plan, things like that. Okay. And if nothing else, have fun with it. It shouldn't cause stress. It should be something you enjoy doing, you're comfortable doing, you feel safe doing, with the ultimate goal of like, why are you doing it? Thinking about that in order to help you just maintain that. And I know that was super fast, but any questions or comments, concerns, thoughts? I'm trying to go through.
Shelly, you beat me to it. Somebody asked for a link to the personal training at UREC, but it's in the chat now if anybody wanted it.
Perfect. I appreciate that. So that's an excellent question. Do you have any specific advice or resources for ladies? There is not really any difference between how we adapt to resistance training or cardiovascular training. Like we are built the same. The biggest difference is absolute muscle strength, just due really to skeletal, like bony frame and how much muscle you're able to put on, and then also your hormone level. The biggest recommendation I've heard is potentially doing some more upper extremity exercises. Typically, women are going to be a little bit, I don't say absolutely, but relatively weaker than men upper extremity wise, and it's more similar lower extremity wise. But again, that's really just due to body frame and skeletal body mass. Men typically have broader shoulders to be able to carry more muscle on. Are vibration plate good for exercise? I honestly
I've seen a couple of those.
I have seen some, and we used to have some in one of our gyms. I don't know if I have enough research to give you a valid answer on that, on how beneficial. I feel like I've heard positive things, but I don't know the why behind it, so I don't want to act like I do on that. I'll try to research that. You all are very welcome. I appreciate you as well. Feel free to reach out and ask any questions if I didn't hit on something or if I confused you even more or made you more stressed than you already were to begin with. I am happy to help however I possibly can.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you all
Got
for
some
asking me.
notes.
Yeah, good. Hopefully somebody did at least.
And I did share the slide deck. I'll post it one more time in case it gets lost in the next chat.
Perfect.
But that's all, everybody. If y'all do want to go back and watch it again, I'll put the recording on the YouTube channel. Should be up there by the end of today. Just do that one.
I am getting a few questions. Is there a good way to get started to avoid the pain that comes with just starting back up? Yeah, listen to your body. So whatever's painful, limit that. Flexibility and mobility are really good for kind of working through that as well. And so if something is hurts, or if maybe, you don't realize it until the next day, try to kind of slowly figure out what that might be, and then, either limit it or build up to it. And so if it was doing push-ups, then maybe we can modify that push-up to be able to build back up to being able to do that. Combine other trainings with yoga. I think if yoga is your primary, then you just kind of supplement however you're feeling. It does count towards that, goal of the minute wise or the time wise for each week. And so just add however you're wanting to add. Yoga, I know I've actually never done that much yoga before, but I know it still can be very taxing on like your body. And so making sure you're still recovering and resting appropriately, and then kind of building on it from there, whatever your goal might be for like why are you building on it, you know? I'm not trying to cop out on that answer of not giving you an answer, but it really depends on what your goals are. But I think energy levels and activity levels, you can really add what you want to that. I really appreciate you all. The custom workout design, I don't know that if you're working with like a personal trainer, I'm not sure how all of that works. Do you all know?
Mm, I was trying to
That
look
one
really.
might be best to just call and ask all your questions at the rec center.
Yeah, I would agree. Because I'm assuming you have to go there for them to be able to assess you to see what they would
Mhm.
recommend and what your goals are. So it might be difficult. Yeah, you have to be a member. Well, all right. Well, I really do appreciate you all asking me. It means a lot.
All right. Karen, any more questions? I guess we can go finish out our Friday afternoon.
Absolutely.
Almost
Hope
the
y'all enjoy your
weekend.
day. Enjoy
All
your
right. Thank you,
weekends.
Justin.
Stay
Yep.
warm. Bye.
Bye.